This month, as I've said to you, I'm talking about ancient wisdom for modern lives. We've taken a look at some of the parables, at a few of the proverbs. Today, I want to talk about 3 specific ancient spiritual practices. Practices that may change a little bit in their flavor, in their style, but the actual practices are the same practices. They are old, they are ancient, and they're, and we still use them today, even if they are in slight variation. We still use them today because they work, because they equip us to live our lives in a better way. The title of my talk is Sacred Practices for the Digital Age. We are living not only in a time of tremendous change globally and politically, but we're also living in a time of rapid change, and the use of our devices is so much more prevalent and consistent than at any other time in history. I think we're facing a bit of a digital dilemma. Our devices, and I'm certainly guilty, I've got plenty of them and I use them just as I imagine all of us do. Our devices help to connect us, but they also can distract us, right? Both of those are true. They connect us. I'm so glad that we have the technology and the devices that allow us to connect with our members and friends all around the country and around the world. I'm grateful for that. But I also know that can be a tendency for the very thing that helps to connect us in meaningful and helpful ways to be used in such a way mindlessly and to distract us from things that are really important. I wanted to look up some facts and statistics to share with you about the digital dilemma that we're in. According to some recent data, the global average of the time that people spend on their devices looking at a screen are 6 hours and 40 minutes a day. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I wonder where I am with that. I know my Apple phone can tell me where I am with that, but my Apple phone is not the only device that I use. I've got my laptop and I've got my iPad, and maybe you do as well. The US average is 7 hours and 3 minutes a day, including time spent on cell phones and computers. And of course, the trend is that the time we're spending in front of our screens is much more than it has been. It's significantly increased over the last few years. And data shows that the younger the generation, the even more time that is spent on the screens. Interesting facts, the numbers of people, I don't have the numbers to share it with you, but injured or killed while texting or calling or surfing, tripping and falling and walking into objects like walls or poles. Have you ever had that happen? Maybe some of you have almost walked into a pole or a wall or a closed door because you had your phone in your hand and were texting. Stepping into traffic and getting hit by a car while crossing the street. Falling downstairs while texting. I remember, I think it was last ski season, or maybe it was the ski season before. We go up to Mammoth and June Mountain pretty regularly, and we had just heard of a young woman riding a chairlift, texting, falling off the chairlift to her death, to her death, to her death. There could not have been anything so important that she needed to be on her phone at that time. I was talking to 2 members of our congregation who recently came back from Tokyo, and I was asking them how their experience was there. And this is not to say anything negative about Tokyo. I've been there, and it's an amazing city. But they shared with me that how shocked they were that when they would walk the streets of Tokyo, how you could barely see anybody's face or look in their eyes because everybody's on their devices. So connected, yes, but also distracted, right? Also distracted. And when we're distracted from things that matter, our life suffers. Our physical well-being suffers, our relationship suffers, our ability to make wise and informed decisions suffers as well. The 3 sacred practices that I want to share with you today, and I'll talk about what they mean today, are the practice of the Sabbath, the practice of prayer, and the practice of singing or chanting. These are ancient practices: the Sabbath, prayer, singing or chanting, all as tools to help us become less distracted and more focused, more in tune with that innate spirit, that innate presence within us and all around us, so that we can have that clearer mind, that more open heart, so that whatever is ours to do, whatever is ours to decide upon or action to take, that we are able to do that in a much more peaceful and informed way. So Sabbath. There's a great book. I did a series on this a number of years ago. Great book written by Wayne Muller. And the title of the book is Sabbath: Finding Rest, Renewal, and Delight in Living Our Very Busy Lives. I like that. Finding rest, renewal, and delight in our busy lives. So Sabbath. How many of you grew up in some form of Christianity? Raise your hand. Okay, that's most of us in this room. And so I bet if your mom or dad took you to Sunday school, that you learned some basic stories and some basic things that you probably needed to memorize. I bet you learned about the story of creation, and it's an allegory, but it's a story. The story of creation, that God created everything in 6 days, and what are we told in the story that God did on the 7th day? Rested. And how many of you remember learning the 10 Commandments? I actually have a 14-karat gold charm bracelet that my parents started me on when I was like 12 years old. And one of the charms is a Bible. And when you open up the Bible, I don't think I could read it now because the text is really tiny, but when you open up the little Bible, there are the 10 Commandments and the Lord's Prayer on one side. Of course, one of the 10 Commandments is to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, right? What is meant by Sabbath? I'm not talking about so much the religion of Sabbath. I'm talking about the spiritual practice of Sabbath. The idea of Sabbath is rest and renewal for the soul. Some of you may, in your work lives, have experienced or taken what's called a sabbatical, right? It comes from the word Sabbath. And again, it's the idea of stepping out of your usual demands and responsibilities, your usual pace of life, stepping out and away from that for a time of rest, renewal, reflection, rejuvenation. In the Old Testament, the idea of the Sabbath is repeated in numerous ways and numerous times. We can assume that Jesus, being a practicing Jew, practiced the Sabbath. He talked about, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The idea of coming apart, not apart at the seams. We come apart at the seams when we don't come apart in prayer, really, when we don't come apart or separate from the craziness and the busyness of our lives. Like that quote from Anne Lamott, "Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you." So Sabbath, how are you practicing that in your own life? Obviously, some of you make a point of being here physically on Sundays or joining in on Sundays, and that's certainly an aspect, I think, of the Sabbath. And I heard from so many of you, when you come back and you come in person, those of you who are local and can come in person, you say that it is still, there's something different, there's something more when the experience of that Sabbath is in community, right? Why? because we are hardwired to be with each other. There is something that happens when we are physically with another that doesn't happen when we are all by ourselves. There's an added dimension, there's an added energy, an added holiness, I would say, or sacredness. So my invitation to you is going to be at the end of talking about Sabbath prayer and chanting or singing, is that you pick one of these ancient practices and you commit to it in your own practice more than you have been. And if you've not been doing any of these, that's okay. Pick one now and start doing it. So what might Sabbath look like for you? Certainly it can be the act of coming together on a Sunday morning. It can be the practice of digitally detoxing for a day a week. And if a day seems like too much, then maybe a few hours. The power of the idea, though, the power of the practice is in intentionality, in routine, and in why we are doing it. So we may come together here in this room. We may, as a practice of the Sabbath, we may say, one day a week, I'm going to cut my digital time down by X. Or I'm going to, one day a week, make sure that I have a block of time that is devoted to simply resting, to giving my soul a chance to catch up with my body. I remember learning about a nomadic tribe of people, I don't remember the name anymore, I should go back and try to find it, they had been studied for a while, and one of their practices was, after a period of walking for days, suddenly they would stop. And they would stop not so much for physical rest, but when asked and studied, they said they stopped to give their soul a chance to catch up with their body. I've never forgotten that line, to stop to give my soul a chance to catch up with my body. That to me is an expression of the Sabbath. I see some of you nodding, right? Sometimes it can just feel like we're that hamster on that treadmill. Every day seems to be, what was that movie, Groundhog Day? Every day seems to be a repeat of the previous. We don't have to live like that. And Sabbath, the very ancient idea of Sabbath, is an invitation to stop that, to step back, to give time for rest, renewal, reflection. I'd suggest that the routine of it and the consistency of it really matters. And when I say routine, I mean a specific period of time, whether it's weekly or daily, that you recognize as your practice of the Sabbath. Why would I say a specific period of time that you do consistently? Why do you think I would say that? It's setting the time aside. When we set time aside, it says we are saying this is really important, right? It's like a non-negotiable. I'm going to do this. It's so important. I'm putting it in my calendar or my day planner. I heard another. Why would I say setting a specific time could be important? It builds in a routine. It builds in the habit. I'll tell you, it's interesting. Part of my Sabbath is my morning prayer practice. And I use one of these timers to remind me and to clock. And I am so far into that I am not going to lose one day and have to start all over again, because it's so valuable to have that muscle memory, that soul memory that says, this Sabbath exercise is mine. And what was funny is this morning, some of you know, Jennifer, my daughter and husband and I, are now proud owners of 2 adorable puppies. And so Jennifer's back home, living at home with us for a while, so that we can care for Truffles, our 15-year-old dog who has renal failure. So we're caretaking for an aging dog and raising 2 puppies. And you know what it's like, right? Some of you know what it's like, and if you've had kids, you know what it's like, where you have to get up in the middle of the night, right? And wouldn't you know it, I finally got to sleep in my own bed last night, and I did not want to get up. And I was late. I was late on my own routine, and my 15 minutes that happens no matter what was 10 minutes this morning. I thought, okay, God, don't do that to me this morning. This is my Sabbath time. This is my quiet time. But what I have learned is that it doesn't have to always be exactly the same as long as the commitment and the consistency to a time period is there. Is this making sense? And I've also learned, this may be helpful to some of you, that not every practice of a particular technique is always going to feel the same or be as rewarding. Sometimes I think I'm a brand new meditator. Where did all of that deep experience go to? I don't know. And other times it's as if it has been a peak experience. And so not expecting every practice of the Sabbath, whatever that is going to be for you, to be exactly the same. It's going to ebb and flow. And maybe that's to help us not have an ego attachment to the results. Does that make sense? Second ancient practice is, of course, the practice of daily prayer or meditation. The practice of daily prayer or meditation. Consistency in connecting with Spirit. Consistency again. We all know that it is not effective, and it could actually be physically damaging to exercise our bodies like a weekend warrior. To be lazy and indulgent all week long and then go, oh, well, I should be doing X number of minutes of physical exercise a week, so I'm going to cram it all in on Saturday or Sunday. What does that do to our bodies? Is it helpful? No. The consistency of a little bit every day is what really makes a difference. And this is true not just of our body in terms of what we put in nutritionally or the physical exercise that we do. It's true of our spirit. It's true of our soul to be able to have time on a consistent basis that we devote to prayer. And you know what? I don't think the technique or the style is nearly as important as picking one that works for you. And how do you know it works for you? You're willing to do it. You're willing to do it. There is no one right practice except the one that you will do consistently. I'm going to repeat that. There is no right practice except the one you will do consistently. There is no right practice except the one that you will do consistently. It could be that your prayer time is to get a copy of the Daily Word, Unity's daily publication, get it, the physical copy or the digital if you don't have it, and that is your prayer thought. Every single day, you read that, you reflect on the Word, you hold the Word for the day. I think I put mine down there. You hold the Word for the day, and maybe every time you walk into a room, you remember that one word. Every time you open a door, you remember that one word. Is it simple and simplistic? Yeah, it is. Is it doable for every one of us? Yeah, it really is. Will it make a difference? It absolutely will. It absolutely will. You could sign up for the daily messages that I send out. They're even shorter than Daily Word, just for today. And you hold that consistently. And then maybe at the end of the day, you reflect upon that. And if you need to put sticky notes, on your mirror or on your dashboard or on your device, now that's really funny, right? A sticky note on your device. I've actually done that. A sticky note to kind of trigger your mind that, yes, I care enough about the well-being of my spirit and soul that I'm going to do this. How many of you are concerned about what's going on in the world right now? Many in our community marched yesterday. So many of you have reached out to me and told me you were there. because of things I had going that I could not delegate out. I was not there in person, but I was there in spirit. And what I know is that times like these, whatever social action, if we feel called to be socially engaged, we want to be socially engaged with a clear mind and an open heart. We want to rely not only on our own thinking, we want to rely on spiritual guidance, on divine guidance. A Sabbath practice, a prayer practice, and I'll get into chanting, singing practice here in just a moment. These are tools that are really, really important that we commit to right now, so that when we show up as a clear-minded, open-hearted, conscious being, taking firm, clear action, but doing it not motivated by anger, doing it motivated by the higher good for all concerned. Does that make sense? It's about being what we are for, even more than what we are against. And that's not an easy thing to do right now. But we do need to give voice to it. And we need to give voice to it that is anchored in spiritual practice and in spiritual truth. Can I have an amen to that? We really do. Lean into your prayer work. Lean into your spiritual practice. Let it give you the spine. Let it give you the courage. Let it give you the energy to do what's needed. We need the action to be grounded in spirit. So I said the three ancient practices, the ancient practice of honoring the Sabbath, a time of rest and renewal, the ancient practice of prayer. It can be very simple. It can be the daily word. It can be just for today. It can be centering prayer. It can be a recitation of a mantra. But it's got to be yours, and it's got to be the one that you will consistently do. And then another very ancient practice, as a practice of feeding the spirit, of feeding the soul, is the practice of singing or chanting. Heck, we have a whole book in the Old Testament called the Psalms. It's a book of song. It's a book of hymn. I don't know that they'd make the bestseller list right now, but it points to the belief that there is benefit that can be experienced from communal singing, from chanting. I think about the times I have been to a Deva Premal chanting concert, the times when we had Krishna Das here and we had the kirtan chanting. I think of some of the chanting that I listened to on my own of Snadam Kaur, and just the energy of the sacred words and the music done in repetition and in time, how that can calm me, quiet me, open me. And when it's done in community, even that much more powerful. It's an ancient practice. How many of you have heard the quote, "He who sings prays twice"? You heard that? Just a few of you. He who sings prays twice. It's attributed to St. Augustine. St. Augustine. Pope Leo is of the Augustinian order. He who sings prays twice. The belief being that singing can be a form of prayer. That singing, especially devotional singing, chanting, is a form of prayer that connects more of our senses and more of our body and energy than simply silently thinking the words or even quietly repeating the words. There's more of us involved in the practice. One of the things that I appreciated so much when I was attending, when we were hosting the Krishna Das Kirtan, is how many times Krishna Das encouraged us and said, it's not about whether you can sing or not. And as someone who has excellent ears for when something's on tune, on tempo, or not, but cannot sing, that I needed to hear that. As someone who remembers being in about second grade in choir, or choral, whatever they called it then, the director, going up and down the line looking for the one who was out of tune and stopping in front of me. I know. It's like, okay, so that's kind of ingrained in me. I must not be able to say. So to be told, it's not about being a perfect singer. It's about engaging one's being in the act of chanting, in the act of singing. So I've given you a potpourri of ancient practices, the Sabbath, prayer, chanting, or singing. You can go online if you don't have any chants on your device. You can download them and just start to listen. Find something, whether it is carving out your own Sabbath practice or really committing to a short, simple prayer practice, or it is taking up the practice of chanting or singing. Pick one and really commit to doing it. And do it in such a way that you set the intention that this is to nourish your soul and to grow you spiritually. To nourish your soul and to grow you spiritually. Namaste.